The faint scent of lemon-scented floor wax and old gymnasium varnish wasn't exactly the bridal aroma I dreamed of as a little girl. But as I looked around the community center hall, at the strings of fairy lights my friends had painstakingly hung from the basketball hoops and the wildflowers Liam's mom had arranged in mason jars on every folding table, my heart felt full. This place was real. It was us. It was a building where I'd run support groups for scared, angry kids who had nowhere else to go. It was where Liam, my sweet, impossibly patient Liam, had graded papers for his high school English classes while waiting for me to finish a late-night crisis call. This room was a part of our story, which is precisely why my family hated it. I caught my reflection in the glass of the trophy case by the door. The simple, elegant white dress felt like costume. My hair, usually pulled back in a practical ponytail, was softly curled. For a moment, I almost liked the daughter my parents always wanted. The kind of daughter who would be getting married at the country club with a 5-course meal instead of a potluck buffet and a guest list that read like a who's who of the city's financial elite. The kind of daughter who would have joined the family's lucrative import-export business without a second thought. The kind of daughter I had tried and failed to be. My phone buzzed on the small table where I'd left it. A text from my brother Mark, the golden boy, the executive VP. Mark, Dad's here. He's in the parking lot. He wants to talk to you. A cold knot formed in my stomach, tight and painful. Liam, sensing the shift in my mood, came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. You don't have to, he murmured into my ear. It's our day. Sarah, you don't owe them anything. I know, I whispered, leaning back into his warmth. But this is the last chance, the absolute last. For 5 years, there had been a chasm between us. It started the day I told them I was turning down the cushy marketing director position they'd created for me at Sterling Corp to accept a job as a caseworker for the city's most underfunded youth services department. I can still see my father's face, his expression shifting from disbelief to cold, hard fury. A social worker. He'd boomed, his voice echoing in the marble, floored foyer of their mansion. You have an Ivy League business degree, and you want to be a glorified babysitter for delinquents. We didn't spend $250,000 on your education for you to throw it all away on charity. It's not charity, Dad. It's a career. It's what I'm passionate about. I'd argued, my voice shaking but firm. Passion doesn't pay the mortgage on a multi-million-dollar home. Sarah, my mother had chimed in, twisting her diamond rings nervously. It doesn't secure your future. Mark had just stood there looking smug. Just take the job, Sarah. Stop being so dramatic. You can volunteer on the weekends if you really need to feel good about yourself. That was the day the chasm opened. They saw my choice as a personal rejection of them, of their values, of the entire empire my father had built from the ground up. I saw as choosing a life of purpose over a life of profit. The calls became less frequent, then stopped altogether. Family holidays were met with stony silence. When I told them I was engaged to Liam, a public school teacher, my mother's only response was a sigh and a quiet, "Oh, Sarah, of course." And now we were. My wedding day. I'd sent the invitation as an olive branch, a desperate hope that this milestone might be the one to finally bridge the gap. Leaving Liam's comforting embrace, I squared my shoulders and walked out the side door into the bright afternoon sun. My father stood beside his gleaming black Mercedes, looking utterly out of place against the backdrop of the community center's slightly faded mural of neighborhood kids playing soccer. He was in a tailored suit that probably cost more than our entire wedding budget. Mark stood beside him, looking impatient. Sarah, my father said, his voice flat, devoid of any father of the bride warmth. This is a farce. I flinched. It's my wedding, Dad? This place. He gestured dismissively at the building. It's an embarrassment. Your mother is mortified. We have friends, business associates, asking where the wedding is. What are we supposed to tell them? The local rec center? You're supposed to be happy for me, I said, the words catching in my throat. You're supposed to be here to support me. You're supposed to walk me down the aisle. He let out a short, bitter laugh. Walk you down that aisle to hand you off to a school teacher in a gymnasium. Sarah, I will not attach my name, the sterling name, to this spectacle. I came here to tell you that to your face. We will make our excuses and leave. We'll send a check. Each word was a physical blow. The last sliver of hope I'd been clinging to shattered. Mark wouldn't even meet my eyes. He was busy checking stocks on his phone. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and angry. You know what, Dad? Fine. Don't walk me down the aisle. Don't be my father. You haven't been for 5 years anyway. Your check can't buy you a daughter, and my charity work has given me a life you can't even begin to comprehend. So you can leave, go back to your country club and your business associates and tell them your daughter had the audacity to be happy without your money. I turned on my heel, my beautiful white dress suddenly feeling like armor, and walked back inside, leaving him standing there in the parking lot, a statue of pride and disappointment. Inside, the music had already started. The small hall was filled with the faces of people who truly loved me. My chosen family, my friends from the shelter, my colleagues, Liam's wonderful, boisterous family who had welcomed me with open arms from day one, and Liam standing at the front, his face is etched with concern. My maid of honor, Jess, rushed to my side. What happened? Are you okay? I took a deep, shuddering breath. He's not walking me? They're leaving. A collective gasp went through our little circle. Liam started to walk towards me, his expression turning thunderous, but I held up a hand. No, I said, my voice clearer and stronger than I thought possible. It's okay. I'll walk myself. I've been walking myself for a long time. It was the most painful, liberating decision I'd ever made. The music swelled, a simple, beautiful acoustic melody. The guests quieted. Jess gave my hand a final squeeze and went to take her place. It was time. The doors at the back of the hall were propped open. My path was 100 feet, a polished wood floor, lined with the people who mattered. And I was going to walk it alone. I took my first step. My head was high. I focused on Liam's face, on his loving, worried eyes. I could feel the pitying looks from some of the guests, the confused whispers. Where's her father? I could hear them thinking. The humiliation my father had intended was washing over the room. And then something shifted. A quiet commotion started at the back of the hall. 2 people in sharp, dark suits with earpieces discreetly entered, their eyes scanning the room with professional intensity. A few guests turned their heads. I paused, confused. Then a woman stepped through the doors. She was elegant, poised, with a familiar, warm smile that I had come to know so well. She wore a tasteful but clearly expensive dress suit, her silver hair cuffed perfectly. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. It was Governor Patricia Williams, my mentor, my boss, my friend. She walked directly to me, her smile never wavering, ignoring the stunned silence in the sea of blinking faces. Sarah, she said, her voice calm and clear, but loud enough for those nearby to hear. I heard there was an opening for a very important job. I hope I'm not too late to apply. I could only stare, speechless. Tears were now streaming down my face, but they weren't tears of sorrow anymore. She gently took my arm, tucking it into the crook of her elbow. Shall we? She whispered. And together, we started to walk down the aisle. The whispers in the room turned from pity to sheer, unadulterated shock. I dared a glance to the side. Through the windows, I could see my father and Mark, frozen in the parking lot, their car door open, staring in disbelief. They hadn't left after all. They had stayed to watch me walk alone, to savor their victory, but the scene unfolding was not the one they had written. As we reached the front, the governor gave my hand to Liam, who was looking at her with an expression of pure awe. She gave his arm a motherly pat and then turned to the officiant. "If I may," she said, her voice now commanding the attention of every single person in the hall. "I'd like to say a few words before we proceed." The officiant, a friend of ours who looked as starstruck as everyone else, simply nodded. The governor stepped forward, taking the microphone. "Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Patricia Williams. But today, I'm not here as your governor. I'm here as a friend and admirer of this incredible woman, Sarah Sterling." She smiled at me. I could see my father through the window, his face pale, his mouth slightly agape. I know that to many of you here, Sarah is a friend, a future daughter-in-law, a dedicated community member. You know her as a social worker. And you would be right. She is one of the most compassionate and effective social workers I've ever met. I first met Sarah 5 years ago when she was running a small, underfunded youth outreach program right here in the city. She paused, letting her words sink in. I saw a spark in her. A brilliant mind paired with a warrior's heart. I saw someone who didn't just want to put a bandage on problems, but wanted to solve them. So I asked her to join my team. A low murmur spread through the crowd. I saw my mother, who must have crept back to the doorway, put a hand to her chest. For the past 4 years, the governor continued, her voice ringing with pride. Sarah has not just been a social worker. She has been the director of my statewide juvenile justice reform initiative. The program she designed and implemented, the one that helps those delinquents some people look down upon, has become a national model. It has reduced the youth recidivism rate in our state by a staggering 60%. 60%. The number hung in the air. The hall was completely silent now, save for the clicks of a few people pulling out their phones, no doubt furiously Googling my name. Her work, the governor's voice grew stronger, got the attention of some people in Washington. For the last 2 years, while still overseeing our state's program, Sarah has been flying to D.C. twice a month. She has been serving as a lead policy advisor for the White House's task force on urban development and youth engagement. My mother let out a small, audible gasp. My brother, Mark, looked as though he'd been struck by lightning. His phone was forgotten in his hand. My father looked like he had seen a ghost. His entire worldview, his carefully constructed hierarchy of success and failure, was crumbling around him in the parking lot of a community center. The young woman standing before you today, Governor Williams concluded, her eyes finding mine, is not just getting married. She is one of the architects of a new federal policy that will impact millions of young lives across this country. She is brilliant. She is essential. She is a quiet hero who never seeks credit, who only seeks to serve. Her work, the work some might dismiss as mere charity, is changing this nation for the better. I have never been prouder to know anyone in my entire life. So, before you watch her marry the love of her life, I ask you all to join me in thanking Sarah for her service. She began to clap, and then the entire room erupted. It wasn't polite applause. It was a roaring, standing ovation. My friends, Liam's family, my colleagues, they were all on their feet cheering, some of them crying. They were celebrating me, the real me, the me my family had refused to see. Through the window, I saw my father slowly sink onto the hood of his Mercedes, his head in his hands. The rest of the ceremony was a blur of happy tears. I said, "I do," to the man who had loved and supported every part of me, the public school teacher who was more of a man than my CEO father could ever hope to be. During the reception, as I was dancing with Liam, my brother approached us. Mark looked humbled. The usual arrogance was gone, replaced by a look of confusion and deep, unsettling regret. "Sarah," he mumbled. "Ibby, I had no idea." I said, my voice gentle but firm, not stopping my dance. "You had no interest." Later, my mother found me by the cake table. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Why didn't you tell us?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "All of that, the governor, the White House, why?" "Would you have listened?" I asked her. "When I tried to tell you about the kids I was helping, about the small victories, you called it a phase. You only measure success in dollars and stock prices. The things I'm proud of, the things that define me, they don't have a price tag. So I stopped trying to sell them to you." The final, most difficult conversation came near the end of the night. My father was waiting for me outside, away from the music and laughter. He looked older than he had that afternoon, defeated. "I read about you," he said quietly, holding up his phone. "It's all there. Articles, press releases from the governor's office. You're ape, you're important." "I was always important, Dad," I replied. "My work was always important. It was important when I was helping a single kid stay off the streets. And it's important now. The only thing that changed is that someone with a title you respect finally validated it for you." He had no answer to that. We stood in silence for a long moment. I was wrong. He finally choked out, "I was a fool. I am so proud of you, Sarah, and so deeply, deeply ashamed of myself." It wasn't a magic fix. It wasn't a Hollywood ending where 5 years of pain were erased by a single apology. But it was a start. It was a crack in the wall I had thought was impenetrable. As I walked back into my wedding, back to my husband, back to the life I had built for myself on my own terms, I knew one thing for sure. My wedding wasn't held at a fancy country club, and the guest list wasn't filled with millionaires. But it was the place I finally got my father back. Not because he saw the light, but because the light was finally shown so brightly from a source so powerful that he no longer had any shadows left to hide in. And in a strange way, that was the most satisfying revenge of all.